If you're just joining us, hi, my name is Bob Britton. I'm a teaching associate professor in the Reed College of Media. I teach in data visualization, design, media literacy, things like that. But data visualization is what you're concerned with. I'm just coming off teaching this semester worth of data journalism. And we're here to talk today about ways you can find data, visualize, or find data, make data meaningful, and visualize it. A lot of you I know from the roster that was shared, they come from academic backgrounds. Some are staff, some are faculty. Some work with data just fine. So your interest is going to be in the visualization side of it. Some of you have never touched a spreadsheet in your life. So we will talk a little bit about that. For some of you, if that's known, just, bask in the sense of superiority while we get through that. And then the back half, I'm going to show you some examples. We'll talk a little bit about how to get data into a usable form in spreadsheets. No advanced statistics here. Don't panic. Or if you were looking forward to advanced statistics, sorry. Talk with me after class. And then we're going to get into making some charts from the data that we've got. So if you haven't already, make sure you have taken that. Let me grab it up here. I'll repost it here. It's in the plan, but I tend to be redundant. I tend to share things more than one time because people access it through different channels. But if you haven't already, please do take my semi-invasive but benign survey. I assure you I am not spying on you. It's just so we've got some relevant data to us. I find it's always helpful to have data that you have some connection to when you're first learning about it, rather than dive right into census and economic data and you're already falling asleep. That's the point. Let's see what we can do with data that we actually might have some connection to. See that? Drinking water already. Okay, so let me pull over. Let me share up. So like I said, I am Bob Britton. Here's my college. Let me link that in there, in fact, so you can see, even though you probably know my background is in, I started not far from here, and I worked there at the Greenville Record Argus, about 5,000 circulation, not big. And because it's a small paper, I got started having to do design because nobody else wanted to do it. And then went to the University of Missouri, where I got started in infographics, data journalism, did some time in Seattle, have worked for some magazines doing design, doing data visualization, and I teach it here. It's a big part of what I do. I love infographics. I'm a colossal nerd for this kind of thing. It's my thing. And I hope to evangelize a little bit and at least share with you why graphics, charts, maps, things like that, ways to show data are great. And I'm adding in a bit now about who I am, but let me share screen here. Once again, share screen. Again, here's the plan. I'll be ticking back to this periodically. Here's me back when I had less hair. It's pulled back today because, pandemic. Someday I'm double vaccinated, so hopefully now I will be getting my hair cut at some point. But here's me if you are that kind of person who'd like to learn more about where I come from. But my big thing is data visualization and information design. It matters a lot. Good information design is good communication. And communication is our whole point. Regardless of whether you're in journalism or not, we want to be able to express ourselves clearly. The wonderful thing about data visualization is that it requires you to structure, to do all this front-end work to come up with often a very simple chart. Couple lines of whatever, a couple bars that seem like, well, what'd that take? But what goes into it, the thinking about structure, is what really matters for data visualization and why it's such a wonderful thing, because we can take complex phenomena and distill them down to what's meaningful to an audience that's not going to worry about the statistics, but would like to see that there was more of this than there was of that. And that question is at the heart of all data visualization, any kind of data journalism, any kind of data communication. And if you're in research and you work with data and you're rolling your eyes at me right now, you already know the answer to this, which is that any good data question, data story, whether journalism or academic or whatever, is based on a simple question: compared to what? If you can't answer the compared to what question, you don't have a data-driven story. And there's lots of great compared to what questions. And they're not all charts, or at least they're not all bar charts, although we'll definitely be doing bar charts today. Think about, for example, you have heard, probably with some trepidation, that the cicadas are coming this year. We got another batch of them coming out. Might not be as bad as the one, what was it, 5 years ago, I think, at least here. I know in DC it's supposed to be ugly. We're on the edge of it, so we might be okay. But again, the cicadas are probably coming. Those little noisy borers that come out of the ground and get busy in the trees for a couple weeks and then die. Your dogs are happy about it, but here's the rest of us. Believe it or not, there's been some excellent data stories done on this, and not just about the aftermath of it. Data can tell us, because if you know the cicadas are coming, you might have, like I said, some anxiety about what's going to happen. Is it going to be a mess? Are they going to get tangled in my hair? That kind of thing. And if you look, for example, I thought I had linked this one, but a couple years back, let me add this link to the forum. What WNYC did was, let me pull this link here in my thing, WNYC cicada tracker. Again, any link I share in here, I will add to the plan. So you can have this as a resource. You'll have access to this link beyond class. So you can see, and what they put together was this fella here, hang on, I only have so much screen space. I'm constantly moving things around. The cicada tracker. And they put together this project. In fact, the original project they did was where you could actually send away, and they'd send you a little sensor kit, because cicadas don't emerge until the ground hits a certain temperature. I want to say it's 67 degrees, but don't quote me on that. They sent out a quickie circuit kit that you could make a little temperature gauge that you plunge into the ground. And when the temperature hits the desired temperature, you let WMIC know, and they log it on their map. And what they found was they were able to anticipate when the cicadas were going to emerge and where. What they're doing currently is they've got this. You can add in where you're at and a more informal thing. So we don't have the this is the older version of it here, but you can provide them all this data on who you are, where you're at, where you saw them, or when you saw them, where you saw them. You can chart it on a map. I haven't put this in yet, so I'm not, because I don't want to jank up their data. What kinds of stuff you saw? Did you see nymphs? Did you see skins? You'll notice they've added what you should be looking for with this. So these lovely little shells and honkers down here, what you heard or did not hear, and tell them more. And then the result of this was, and again, this is from the old data. I am not loading up very well here. There I go. It takes a while to load. We got a lot running here today. This was the result of all that user data. The map is loading slowly for me, unfortunately. But this is the East Coast of the United States. And you could see in real time where the cicadas were about to emerge and get a sense for maybe when to close your windows, maybe when to bring the dogs in. This is crowdsourced data journalism. The journalists at Radiolab and WNYC are the ones who processed it and put it into a form that you and I couldn't do. Well, maybe I could, but that you couldn't do. But they wouldn't have that data without an audience, which is what's so great about it. And I realize most of us are not journalists in here. That's okay. Notice the link up here, by the way, for how to build a detector. They've got the details for how to actually, this is from 2013, but how to put together that build your own sensor. There's a video with it. I won't take time showing it today, but it's just a tremendous example of story. They can talk about what cicadas you've seen, how to decode the temperature you've seen. There's a blog about it. It's just this tremendous put together thing that's based on data that comes from a crowd. That's not all of our goal in here, but the idea is taking data and making something that doesn't matter if you're all entomologists. None of you are, I'm pretty sure. It matters that you're concerned about the noise, the bugs, the hair, the things like that. This is a way to take a massive amount of data and make it into, again, I apologize that the map part of this is not loading up. Maybe it's because it's an old site. It worked for me earlier, so I might just have too many things running right now. But you can see, again, these are the East Coast of the United States, particularly where the cicadas came out. Any question potentially has data involved with it. So get out of the mindset of, this is economic stuff. This is political polling. It's that too. But any question you have likely has a data-driven answer that you can come up with. And this is what's useful to this. For example, let's take it into the realm of the much lighter. Here's some K-pop for you. I don't know if you have kids, if you're K-pop fans. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's Korean pop music. I won't show the whole thing. This is BTS, arguably one of the biggest K-pop groups in the world right now. Oh, yeah. Now, we're not going to watch the entire K-pop video, though you may wish to. They're delightful. But I'm going to wager most of us don't speak Korean. Maybe some of you do. I don't know your background. It doesn't matter. K-pop is big around the world right now. It's huge. If you have kids, you might have heard it. Perhaps you're a fan. You know, I don't judge. But, you know, maybe you've heard it. Maybe this is your first exposure to K-pop. That's a bad freeze frame. But like any, you know, if it's not K-pop you care about, any trend, the questions you immediately are going to have is, if you're part of it, you know, you might not have these questions, but if you're not part of that trend, you might ask, you know, why is this so big? Who cares about this? What's this about? Where does it come from? All kinds of questions. And a lot of those questions can be answered with data. Here is a site that I love, and I'll be talking about more as we go on, called The Pudding. The Pudding is a creative, individualized data visualization site where people, usually with some data chops, but usually not with all the skills, come together to create data-driven stories that answer interesting questions. Here's a question: why are K-pop groups so big? Which is a very mom and dad question, right? And it's a data-driven question, though. Now, this is where I'm cautious because my computer was chugging a little bit before, and sometimes when it's slow, this story doesn't load up well. I might need to restart my browser. We'll find out, just so you know going into it. But why are K-pop groups so big? That doesn't sound like a data-driven question, and yet it is. There's no one variable. There's no one bit of data that's going to track bigness. You know, you've got Billboard chart listings, you've got fan base size and things like that. There's no one variable. So what's needed to answer this question is some kind of a proxy, something that can get at the idea of K-pop groups being quote unquote big. And what do I mean by a proxy? And again, I know some of us are researchers and know exactly what I mean by a proxy, so bear with me. But what I mean by a proxy is a number or a value or set of values that's used to stand in for something that can't be measured. Here's a great example for you: quality of life. You've heard that term before. My quality of life has gone up. My quality of life has gone down. During the pandemic, all of our qualities of life have decreased. Great, you've heard that. What is quality of life? There's no number for quality of life. And so we need a proxy to measure quality of life. And things that get used are things like amount of leisure time, socioeconomic status, so your income, education level, health, all these different values that can be measured in terms of blood pressure, hours of free time, things that we quantify can be put together to form a proxy for quality of life, because there's no number that measures quality of life. You need a proxy. So a lot of good data questions require proxies. Why are K-pop groups so big requires a proxy. There's no one number that says, K-pop groups are so big because 7. You know, it doesn't work like that. So you need a proxy that can describe the answer to the question you want to ask. And again, what I like about the pudding is it's very narrative as well. So they talk about like where it's very individual. They don't try to be journalistically objective, but they do try to be accurate. And so feel free to look through. There's wonderful stuff in here. It's just really playful stuff, and yet very good data-driven work. And so how did the groups get so large? Let's look at the history first. So let me resize my window here. It looks like that's not all coming up as it should. So what they start with is the background. Here's K-pop group sizes from 1992 on. If you recall, some of you may have been fans. The boy band movement of the 90s was what we think of when we think of boy bands. NSYNC, your 98 Degrees, maybe if you were an alternative type, your Backstreet Boys, that kind of thing. K-pop's been around for a while, but now this is going to change as we go. Here's the group sizes. So here's how many groups there were. Each rectangle was a group, and group size denotes how many members. So there were groups with 2 members, 3 members, 4 members. That's about the size of it. That's up to 20. This is from 1992 to 1999. Let's scroll to the next decade. Hang on. That's our first generation. Make that a hair smaller so you can see it. And this is our first generation of K-pop, the proto wave, if you will. And as I'm scrolling, by the way, and that's why this text is going past, describing the details. Once that passed, then we get to the second generation. Look how that first generation shrinks. So now we've got 2000, 2009. Look how many more groups there are. Not necessarily much bigger in terms of group size, but way more groups. Kind of a lull in 2004, but the 90s were nothing. Now let's scroll to our current decade. Again, mouse over any one of these and you'll see the name of the group, when they debuted, what the group size was when they debuted. Let's scroll to the next one. Look at this decade. My God, that's some K-pop, and my screen's not even showing you all the way down to the bottom of the list. Look how many groups there are. We've got a color code going on, by the way, that they're going to explain in just a minute. These are in green. These are groups that were recruited internationally, so from outside Korea. In pink are groups that got so big that they broke down into subgroups. Again, K-pop groups are big. BTS that I just showed you has 7 members, I believe. That's way bigger than the Backstreet Boys even. The dark ones show us K-pop groups that came out of Idol survival shows like American Idol and that kind of thing. And this gets us a whole picture. But look what this is. I want to be clear. With all the scrolling and growing and bouncing around, this is a bar chart. That's all it is. You can make a bar chart. You can make this. Now, you couldn't code this just yet, or maybe you could. Again, I don't know your background. But you can definitely be able to make a bar chart at the end of the all this is the bar chart that compares. It becomes a little more bite-sized. If I unleash this on you right at the beginning, it's information overload. By breaking it down scrollably and by pulling up those screen and parts, we're providing, this is information architecture. We're breaking it down in a way that gives us a little bit more meaning, a little bit more granular understanding. We can always scroll back too to get to the earlier sections if we want. This is what I love about this site. They've got excellent designers working with us. This is beyond what you'll be able to do, but at the heart of this, I want to stress, it's just a bar chart. You'll be able to make a bar chart. Some of you already can. And then it goes down into more detail about this. I'm going to move on from this. It breaks down what the different roles are in a K-pop group, so you can see there's specific roles. There's the leader or the maknae. There's the subunit leader. There's rappers. There's vocalists. There's dancers. There's visuals. You notice how information color is used as information to break this down. And you'll notice this is not a bar chart. And this is important too, because when we think about information visualization, we tend to think of bar charts, line charts, pie charts, and we'll make those definitely. But what we've got here, these are pictures that are color coded. And yet they provide information. This too is information visualization. Show us the parts of a whole and break it down. That's a graphic. You can see the change in positions. So of those positions, the leader, the maknae position has got more popular, while leaders have tailed off a little bit, still at the top of the list. We can scroll down and see, rappers, sub-leaders tend to be low, dancers have tended to be low, sub-vocalists, the center tends to be low. And so we can see how those positions have changed across the 3 generations. And on and on and on. And all this is data about K-pop bands, K-pop band members, when they came out, and what their positions are. Not a complex set of data, but a neat story. And I love the pudding because it's got stories like this. I'm not going to go into more depth on here just today, but take a look. This is their front page, which is usually randomized, a mix of new stuff and popular stuff. How many artists overshadow the band after going solo? Get out of your geographic music bubble. How science came together during COVID-19. How rigid is the middle class? The historical cost of light. How officer complaints are investigated. Why I like this page so much is it's all questions. And if you have questions, you can tell a data-driven story. What I want to get out of your head, this is true for my students, it's true for most of you, I would wager, is the idea of like, well, I want to make a bar chart. I want to make a pie chart. If you start with that, you've already lost. You know the expression, to the person with a hammer, everything looks like a nail? If you come at this saying, I'm going to make a bar chart, you've already limited yourself so much. You want to start with a question. And it's okay if it's too broad. Look at this. How rigid is the middle class in the US really? That's too broad to answer with a single calculation or chart, isn't it? This requires a proxy. Rigid isn't a number I can measure with one number. So I'll need to spell out what I mean by rigid in this story to tell this story. I need to identify proxies that get at rigid and middle class for this story. And then after all those questions are asked and the data is found, then I think about chart type. Visualization, this is a weird thing to be saying in a data visualization class, I realize. But because I want you to make good charts, I want you to be able to do the planning for a chart before you think about a chart. If you can't think about what you want to ask, you're going to make a bad chart because you don't know what you want to know. And you can't choose the right chart if you don't know what you want to know. One more example before we get into the hands-on stuff, but I try to start this off with just some concretes here. Back in the plan, I've got one more, this is a more recent and a more political, because again, I said this isn't all about economics and politics, but it's also, there's excellent chart because there's so much data about economics and politics. Here's one of the most recent ones that I really like that you won't be able to make today, but I want to stress how simple this is. As any good newspaper is going to do, any good news source is going to do a post-election recap and see, well, what happened and what can we learn from it? Over a headline, Democrats, in the 2020 US election, Democrats gained in nearly every battleground state, running up margins in cities. Okay, that's what they found. What they wanted to know, though, is because the 2016 election was unusual, regardless of your political leanings, it was unusual. Places that were supposed to vote blue voted red in far more proportions than was expected. Polls were shattered by this election. The anomaly, you might say, was Donald Trump, or the economic climate, or it doesn't matter what. The point is, it was an unusual election. And so the question that they're asking in 2020 is 2020 also unusual? Did it return to where it was before 2016? Did it stay where it was in 2016, or did it go somewhere new? Those are the three areas of our question. To answer that question, the Washington Post went in and came up with, I don't even have a name for this chart. You will not be able to make this an infogram today. But all it is, take a look, is 3 dots and 2 arrows that show us 3 things. Where a given county voted in 2012, whether it's on the Republican side, whether it went Republican or Democrat. The farther away from the center it is, the more strongly it went for Republican or strongly it went for Democrat. Where it was in 2012, where it voted in 2016, and where it voted in 2020. That's it. You could have made this as a line chart, I guess, but the downward progression forces us to think about this a little bit different. And so we start here, and then we see that curve. So Cobb County, Georgia, took a hard swing to the left, crossed the line, in fact, went Democrat in 2016, the year that Trump won, going from a strong Republican performance in 2012. And then 2020, it continued that shift. Compare that to Georgia overall, which actually shows that Cobb County is a lot like Georgia. Was in the red, swung left, not by as much, but swung left, and in 2020, continued to swing left. Now, if we want to grab this, what I like about this, and again, this is the Washington Post. They're one of the best for data visualization these days. I prefer the New York Times, frankly, for data viz. But you can find your own county. So let's go down and find, here we are in Mon County. This is always surprising, I think, more to new people to the county, that Mon County is not a bastion of Democratic of Democratic voters. It's got more in the rest of the state, but here's Mon County. Red in 2012, red in 2016, less red in 2020, but always red. That's typical. And here's West Virginia overall. Red in 2012, hard swing right in 2016, and no swing back in 2020. Now compare that to some other counties. Let's look at, and I always have my students look at this because if you pull up, like, let's say Kanawha County, you can see that Kanawha looks way more like West Virginia than Mon County does. Or if you pull up, let's go deep into the coal counties. Let's try McDowell. Way more. In fact, McDowell continued to go right in 2020. Let's get out of West Virginia and pull up, I usually have my students, because they're from a wider range, I'll have them say where they're from. Let's pull up, I don't know, Greene County, Virginia. Greene County, very Republican. West Virginia stayed very Democrat and got more Democrat. Republican, or Greene County swung right, came left. If I go to my home county of Erie County, Pennsylvania, where I'm from, how'd we do? Generally, the cities in Pennsylvania tend to be more blue, but Erie's not Pittsburgh or Philly. So let's take a look. Erie took a wicked swing to the right in 2016. Look at that. Erie's hard Democrat, hard blue collar, hard labor union, and it not only went right, it crossed the line. Now in 2020, it crept back over, but it's right there on that cusp. So it's not a straight drop down, but it hasn't changed. And Erie looks like Pennsylvania as a whole. In fact, more of a shift in Erie, but this is the move Pennsylvania took. Compare that to, let's go up to around Pittsburgh. Let's look at Allegheny County. Blue, blue, blue. Very different than Pennsylvania. Continual movement to the left. Let's look at Philadelphia County. You can probably expect what you're going to see there, because these are 2 Democratic bastions. Philadelphia actually got slightly less blue. Still basically a straight drop. But Allegheny County near Pittsburgh is a more of a Democratic region than Philadelphia is. And looks a lot more, Philly looks a lot more like Pennsylvania overall. And again, you can scroll through. So beyond that scroll, you can go through, you can see key battleground state, New Hampshire taking that wicked hop over there, Arizona moving steadily to the left, Florida moving steadily to the right, Iowa, big jump and staying there. Again, you've got categories now you can identify. But I want to stress once again, just like in the Kpop chart, which was just a bar chart, all this is 3 dots and some lines. The problem here isn't coming up with the perfect graphic that's going to tell the story. The problem is planning it out and then figuring out, what do I need to show and how do I need to show it? That's what comes first. I know I'm spending a whole half hour on this because this comes first. Being able to plan comes first. Let's pull back a little bit. We'll get to our survey results in a second. I've got some links in here. Again, I'm not going to go through everything, but different types of data stories matter a lot. A handout that I've got in here to look through. This is drawn from a New York Times video, and it's an excellent video. So I give credit up here if you want to watch the video on your own time. There's 7 main areas you can ask a data question in. How does something change over time? Can you start with a wide area and drill down to a narrower area? So for example, West Virginia, very red. Mon County, also red, but right next to that line compared to Kanawha, compared to McDowell, that kind of thing. It's a drill down story. Zoom out. If we look at Mon County and say, well, this should be a Democratic state, then we pull out to West Virginia and we see, oh, no, it's not. Both these cases, though, are compared to what? Comparing things over time, comparing the big to the small or the small to the big. Contrast, comparing, for example, the 2 most populous states, Florida and California. Which states, how are these states different in population sparing? Which expectancy for senior citizen population in these 2 highly populated states? Intersections, when do the numbers cross? Here's a great example from that. 538, if you are not familiar, 538 is Nate Silver's data-driven blog. And every day they start doing this for Trump, and they continue doing things now. They have over in the sidebar, I have to wait for it to load up, a graphic called, well, now it's how popular is Joe Biden. Originally it's how popular is Donald Trump. Here's a great example of intersection. So it shows you the percent who approve of him, the percent who disapprove of him. And why this is useful for intersections is because if you scroll down, it compares the president's performance to date to every previous president. So here he is compared to Donald Trump at this point in his presidency. Here he is compared to Obama. And here's where it gets interesting. If we take George W. Bush, we can see where the intersection happens. Where does Biden's popularity cross his? And then we look and see what was happening then. That intersection is a useful story. And when we get up to here, let's assuming Biden holds consistent, he'll probably have an overall higher approval rating than George W. Bush right up until September 11th. And then that's going to be an intersection. And it's not going to be any mystery as to why that happened. The next interesting story is going to be, do they ever cross again? Because as you can see here, Bush's popularity really tanked about a year or so after September 11th. Still got reelected, but there you go. So where those intersections happen, where low crosses to high, that's a good data story. Factors, looking at the whole and identifying the parts that make it up. Outliers, things that are weird. If you've got all the dots over here, and then there's one dot up here, I want to hear that dot story. Now, it might be that that dot is an error, in which case I don't want to hear that dot story. But it might be that dot matters. That dot's something that we need to hear about. Great. Every one of these 7 characteristics or criteria, though, makes for a good data-driven story. When you're thinking about a story, when you're thinking about your questions, ask yourself, what am I asking about? What kind of compared to what question am I asking? So let's talk about the chart types we're going to make. Let's see. I've got a handout. This is a bigger one that we're going to use here. I'm going to talk about just about chart types here real quick. This is a handout that I've used for a class before, but I want to talk real briefly about types of charts. There's other types of graphics as well, but types of charts that you can make. In brief, every chart serves a purpose. They don't all do the same thing. Columns, bars, lines, stacked bars, pies, and scatter plots. And I'll say to you the same thing I say to my undergrad students: please do not go racing headlong into the scatter plot. Everybody loves the scatter plot. It's almost never the right choice, but sometimes it is. Please don't go after the scatter plot. And if you're a researcher, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They look awesome. You probably don't want a scatter plot. I have so many students, they'll say, well, the bar charts are boring. Here's a takeaway from today. If your chart is boring, it's not the chart's fault. If your chart is boring, your data is boring. And no amount of tarting it up is going to change that. It's hard cheese to swallow, I realize. I always have students that, well, I thought I'd put a picture in. I thought the bar chart was boring. If your bar chart is boring, your data is boring. If they're all the bars the same height, yeah, that's a boring bar chart. And changing the chart's not going to change that. That's a boring data story. There's no good compared to what there. So let's take a look. This is a column chart. Now, I promise you, I'm going to get this wrong, and I'm going to call a column chart a bar chart and a bar chart a column chart. And really, it doesn't matter. But it kind of matters in the sense of keeping things straight. A column chart is vertical, you know, like columns. Column charts typically compare values over time. If you use a column chart to compare values that are not over time, nobody cares. It's fine. Don't worry. But if you want to be precise, columns are used for time. Almost always. There's always going to be exceptions. But it shows a fixed value per unit. Number of watermelons I sold each week. That's a column chart. Week 1, week 2, week 3. Numbers of COVID cases per month. That's column chart because there's a set number per month. You've probably seen that used as a line chart a lot, and that's fine. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. But if you want to be really precise, should be a column chart because it's a set number per unit. Customers by each monthly close date. That's a column chart. If you're not using time, you should use a bar chart, which are horizontal. And if you call a bar chart a column chart or vice versa, it's okay. Nobody cares. It's fine. But if you want to be precise, this is a bar chart, not a column chart. Bar charts are typically used for comparing differences not involving time. They are categorical, so they show a fixed value per unit. The number of players on each position of a team, number of pitchers, number of catchers, number of shortstops, that's a bar chart. There's no time involved. They should be arranged most to least so that we can make a good comparison. If they're just random or alphabetical, it's really hard to make a comparison. Bar charts are used for comparing categories. So how many were in this category? Category 2, 3, 4, 5. For example, in my example here, the number of customers served by each type of employee. How many served by individual contractors, by the manager, by front of house, by back of house? That's a bar chart. Whoop. There's always exceptions. This is from the Washington Post story on the impeachment inquiry, the first one. Isn't it weird we have to say there's the first, we have to differentiate the first and the second impeachment, but here we are. This is the inquiry, not the actual impeachment. This is about public support for an impeachment inquiry way back in October 2019. This shows the shift from July to October in people that felt that Democrats were not overreacting to this story. Big jump across that 50% line. All right then, no time is involved. This is still a column chart. Am I mad about that? No, it doesn't matter. I'm just talking about precise use. This is fine as a column chart. Go ahead. Couple rules for bar charts. You always want to sort most to least. Exact same data here on this chart for excuses for being late to class. This chart, same data. This chart is better than this chart because I can see clearly which was the most common excuse. I forgot to set my alarm. And which was the least common. It was still too dark. I thought it was nighttime. That's an unusual one. This one is less useful because while I can see the longest one, it's a lot harder to compare the other ones. Most to least is the best sort, almost always. Here's my other never. Don't tart up your charts. It doesn't help. It really doesn't help. That 3D thing in Excel, if I could change one thing about this world, okay, two things. The second thing, though, that I'd change would be to eliminate the 3D chart option from Excel because, my God, look at that. And this is not a subjective thing like, well, it's ugly. But where do I read this chart from? Do I read from the part that's closest to me? Do I read from the back of it? What do the shadows have to do with it? Is the chart touching the back wall or is there space from it? Look at all these questions I've introduced that conflate this, that make this data harder to read. Look over here. This little monster here, Nigel Holm made this. He's fabulous. It's a god-awful chart. You'll see these on USA Today all the time, although they've gotten better. This is just a bar chart. But because the baseline is curved, because we had to give him a lip, it's not an accurate comparison anymore. This chart over here is the actual data that would be drawn from that chart. It's far more readable. Yes, it doesn't have eyes and teeth, but it's meaningful. What's your chart there for? And I know this is hard for some of us. Bar chart's boring. If it's boring, your data is boring. If seeing that the most recent number is the highest is useful, then your chart's not boring because that's what happened. Resist. It's hard. It's a human thing. I feel you. It's okay. Stack bar charts. Stack bar charts show parts of a whole. So this could easily be a single bar column. See, I did it already. I said stack bar. This is clearly a stack column chart. I told you. This is clearly a chart of sales at each one of these 5 store locations. And it would be fine as a column chart like that. As a stack bar chart, though, it shows us a little bit more. It shows us the parts of the whole. It shows us for Cherry Street sold this much clothing in blue, this much equipment in yellow, and this many accessories in purple. Overall, Cherry Street sold the most, but we can also see that Peach Street sold more equipment than Strawberry Mall, even though Strawberry Mall sold more overall. We can see that Strawberry Mall sold more accessories, even though Cherry Street sold more than all. It adds a layer of data. If you've got parts of the wholes that you're charting, stack bar chart's nice. Here's that Trump story again, asking whether a request on Biden was appropriate or not. This shows in dark red people who felt it was very inappropriate, that Trump's request about to Ukraine about Biden was inappropriate, and light red is people who felt like it was kind of inappropriate. Put them together, these are all the people that felt it was inappropriate in any way, either strongly or sort of. And it breaks it down by Democrats, independents, and Republicans. It's a stack bar chart. Shows not just how much, but parts within how much. Here's a line chart. Let me preface once again. If you use a line chart where you should have been using a column chart, nobody's going to come to your house and take it away. It's fine. But if you want to be precise, line charts are for continuous values. It shows that continuous values change over time. Examples of continuous values are numbers that are constantly changing. The air in your room, the air temperature in your room right now is a continuous value. Every time you speak, you heat it up a little bit. Every time you move, you create a breeze that cools it down a little bit. It is constantly in flux from 72 to 72.1 to 72.05, back and back and back. It's always changing. Temperature is one thing that's constantly changing. So it's a line chart. Monthly average temperature, sure. If you want to show the stock market, that's one number that's constantly going up and down. Your weight, your body is constantly burning and processing calories. Your weight, some of us more than others, constantly. That's a line chart because it's. If you do weight as a column chart, do the cops come to your house? They do not. It's just a matter of precision, knowing what chart to use where. Absolutely, this could have been a bar chart too. The line chart is just nice for seeing those numbers in comparison. Plus, for this one, it's easier to compare these 4 cities' average temperatures over time. Last one. Oh, sorry. This is from the Washington Post story again. This has lines. Would you call it a line chart? This shows change in support for the inquiry from July to October. And we can see for every group except for Republicans, for every group it went up. And for independents, it crossed. Democrats, they were always in favor. Republicans, they were always predominantly opposed. But for every group, support for an inquiry went up in that period. That's the story. Pie charts. There's people out there that'll tell you never use a pie chart. These people are wrong. Hating pie charts is like hating Comic Sans, that kind of thing, which I do. But it's one of, yeah, right. But it's one of those things where, or saying like, oh, I'm afraid of clowns, or having a strong opinion about the Oxford comma. I'm sure I'm touching nerves left and right here. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter. A good editor is going to say there's a right and a wrong circumstance for just about anything. There really is. Yes, even the Oxford comma, don't at me. But it's true. There's cases where it's going to add clarity. There's cases it's going to take away. Generally, there's a better choice than a pie chart. But there are places where a pie chart is good. Pie chart compares parts of whole. If your numbers don't add up to 100%, you don't have a pie chart. Slices should be kept to a minimum. Humans cannot make out more than 2 to 5 slices. It's a fact. Research shows this. So, things we don't do. Please do not give me a circus tent. I always have a student that does it. Nobody has any meaning, can draw any meaning from this. This is not a good pie chart. This is a good pie chart. Dogs, percent of pet ownership. There we go. Sorting most to least. This chart goes from the biggest slices to the smallest slices. So these two are very close, purple and green. We can tell that green is bigger than purple because we've learned the rule that the bigger slice comes before the smaller slice we're reading clockwise. This one, we can't tell if green and orange are bigger or smaller than each other because there's no order here. Pie charts are often screwed up. They are often ill-abused, but they do have their place. And once again, never use 3D. Please just don't take it away. You don't want it. It doesn't help you. It's not good. I don't do a lot of nevers in here. That's a never. Don't do it. You're not helping anybody. As for whether you really need one, there's almost always an option, a different option, but there's places for it. Here's a nice little chart that shows the same things. The nice thing about the pie chart is because there's few slices here, we can compare via small multiples. We can see, in this particular case, the stack bar is probably better because it's easier to compare, especially the dark gray and the orange bars here. But whereas the pie, it can be a little bit hard to compare all the slices. The stack bar, we compare them all in a row. So the stack bar is the better choice here. If we go down here, though, a bunch of pies with one slice, these small multiples here, we get a nice timeline because there's only one slice, and we can see that the amount of women involved from the 1900s, that's the orange slice, has steadily increased over time. And in the aggregate, it's a really nice little data visualization. Every chart has a home. There's no nevers here, other than 3D. Don't give me the, other than that, yeah, go ahead. Last one, the much abused scatterplot. If you have a scatterplot, the only time you want a scatterplot is when you have an expectation. First of all, you have two variables, two numerical variables that can go up or down in a range of numbers. March is not a numerical variable. Red is not a numerical variable. Your age, your height, your weight, these are numerical. These are ratio variables that you can compare, or interval variables that you can compare that can have a range in between age 20 and age 30, for example. And so height and weight are great examples. because a scatter plot is when you expect there to be a relationship between one and the other. We would reasonably expect that as height goes up, for most people, weight would go up. There's light, tall people, and there's heavy, short people. But generally, we'd expect the taller you are, the more your weight is going to increase, all other things being equal. That's a useful case for a scatter plot. And that's what this chart is of here. As kids get taller, that's the x-axis here, height or weight increases. That's the y-axis here. And we see generally that's the trend that's followed. That's when you want a scatter plot, when you expect a relationship between one thing and another. I have a student this semester who did a relationship between a state's median family income, how much a household earns, and percentage of women reporting domestic violence. Her expectation being that as median household income went down, incidents of domestic violence against women would go up. And in fact, what she found is that's not the case. It's actually a lot more cloudy than that. Again, we didn't do a statistical regression analysis of this, but she did not find a smooth trend like we see here, which was surprising to her. And so she gave her an additional story to write. That's what you use a scatter plot, though. Most of you will never use the scatter plot. But if you do, make sure you're using the right variables for it. Okay. Scatter plots are great for spotting outliers. This little fellow over here, I want to know about him. Is he an error? Is he important? Let's check. But that dot that doesn't fit the trend, yeah, let's see what his story is. But no chart's always appropriate. I get students that try to do a scatter plot that look like this because they don't have scatter plot data. Each one of these is a month. That's not useful. This one is not a useful scatter plot. We got the right kind of data, but this tells us nothing. If it doesn't reveal something useful, it's not a useful chart. Okay. That's the show on that. So you know all about charts now, right? Sure. Let's take a minute and I've talked about our graphic types. What I want to do is show you our group data. So I've pulled up, let's see, here's our survey. We got 19 responses. God bless you. We can take a quick look. What I like about Google, I use a lot of Google. I am not paid by Google. I always have to say, I just use them a lot because it's free. And I'm a big advocate for free. I guess it's not free. They're taking your data, right? They're watching you. So nothing's free. But here's our breakdown of where we're from. Predominantly staff in here, decent chunk of students, some faculty, and some, we got it, other, all the above except faculty. Compelling. I love other because other shows me what I didn't think of. When I looked at the spreadsheet that Jesse provided me prior to this, in fact, the data, there were so many different ways that people chose to say staff. There were so many ways that people chose to say, I heard about this via email or through personal contact that really all fit within a personal contact category. And I'm not saying to say it was done wrong. I'm saying that shows me how complex data looks complex can really be very simple. But I had to go through and change that to say, oh, this actually came from here. I came up with these categories based on the variety of responses that you all gave in that original sign-up sheet. Who we work for, again, this gives us a column chart, should be a bar chart, but it's easier to do sideways. So look at this over here. Some of us say WVU, some say West Virginia University, some say WVU. Different centers, I would wager at least some of these are probably the same place that just were worded differently or might have a typo or things like that. Because I didn't give you categories, this is open-ended response. I need to clean that up to see where are we actually from here. What state were you born in? I will bet you anything. I've got at least 3 different kinds of West Virginia here. I will bet you I've got, yep, here's WVA. Here's, oh, come on, work. There we go. I've got WV and I've got West Virginia. Each one of these, so actually we've got 4, 4, and 1. We've actually got 9 people from West Virginia. I even looked here. We've got Virginia, we got Pennsylvania, PA. So really that adds up differently. You didn't do it wrong. I didn't give you categories for it. I didn't tell you how to answer. And so there's actually gonna be far fewer columns than what we see here. Where do you live now? Again, WVA, WV, West Virginia, US. Oh, God bless you. Thank you for making my data richer. But really, there should only be 2 columns here, right? Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Honestly, that would be a pie chart, really. How old are you? Again, this one, we probably are not going to have duplicate values here, but we can see that range. About how tall are you? I mean, good luck. I think I know in inches. How inch-star data visualization? Oh, thank you for being nice to me. That most of us are pretty interested in being here. Some of us are quite anxious. That's very common. Don't worry. Hopefully you're getting a sense for what we're doing at this point. A lot of us are very anxious. Some of us are not anxious at all. And that's okay. Hopefully this is going to de-stress you on some of this. How many pets do we have? Wow. 8. Oh, wait. 8 of us said 0. 5 of us said, Oh no, one of us said 5. Most of us are around here. If we average these out, I would wager we'd have, let me see if I can eyeball this, slightly, we'd have 1 point something pets, I think, on the average would be my guess. How many of them are dogs? I asked for percentages just to see what you guys would do on this. Oh, sorry, I asked about how many of them are, asked what percentage are dogs. Thank you. If somebody filled in, it was my understanding there would be no math. I can't divide by 0. Oh, we got nerds in here. Excellent. And on and on. So we see like most of us had no percent were dogs. You didn't have any dogs or you didn't have any pets. That's an error in my data gathering process, and that's intentional, believe it or not. What's your favorite color? Emerald green versus green. Do we consider those to be different or the same? That's up to you as the data processor. The point is, why I laid this out is to give you a sense for all the little weirdnesses that come in when we ask for data. This is why the front end is so important. And saying like, well, I'm going to have 4 bars, and then I get multiple shades of green, then I'm going to have to rethink things. Aquamarine, do I call it its own color? Do I fit it with green? Do I fit it with blue? Bubble, I don't even know what bubble is. Somebody said no. So, you know, do you get the guacamole at Chipotle? Again, I've tried to ask some oddball questions just to see. These are cultural questions. Some people, wow, 42% of us always get the guacamole at Chipotle. Some people don't. We have one, I don't go there. We got never ate there. We got what's Chipotle. We got I don't like guacamole. We get sometimes. But almost half the class. That's impressive. You guys are doing all right for yourselves. What's the meaning of life? 42. I always look to see if I'll get at least 142. And those of you who know why, know why. Love data visualization, eat things that make your stuff. Oh, look at this. This is qualitative data here. You'll notice, with the exception of 42 and a couple others, base 13, question, happiness, meaning. We've got single words, we've got sentences, we've got jokes, we've got serious answers. This is data too. You can draw from this and pull data. Let me show you one more example before we get into stuff. What I'm talking about here is presidential speech database. Here's data. The Miller Center official presidential speech that's out there. And you can go through and find the president, formal ones. I don't think you have every utterance they've made. I don't think you got every one of Trump's tweets in here. But we can go to Barack Obama and go down through. So commencement address at Rutgers, remarks to the people of Cuba, State of the Unions, obviously. Eulogy for Reverend Clementa Pinckney. Let's take a look at that. Here's the actual video of it. And you can get the transcript and see what he said. And you can search that transcript. Now, it's a little bit complex for our purposes, but if you're a Python user or you know somebody who knows Python, for example, you could do a word analysis. You could do a word count analysis of specific words using word. Find and replace every time he says, here, let's try something. This is not hardcore data analysis, but let's just try something. We'll create a new document. I'll call this Obama. Was it Pinckney? Pinckney. Okay. The eulogy. Paste it here. Hopefully that works. Things should work. It's thinking. There we go. Here's all them words. So let's just see. Okay, copied everything. That's okay. Oof, my goodness. That's okay. Let's see though. So again, I did this fairly inexpertly. That's all right. I'm just going to do a quick search and let's see how many times he said God. What's it say? Search and replace says 68. Now, I would want to make sure I didn't have stuff that wasn't in speech there, but he mentioned God 68 times. How many times does he say praise? Oh, hope I spelled it right. 12 times. How many times does he say pain? 12 times. And on and on and on. Now, if you did a categorization of those, you've got data. You can compare that to every eulogy speech he's given. Are there circumstances in which he says pain or praise or God or whatever word matters? More, less? Try it for State of the Union addresses. How often does the word immigration said? How often is illegal said? How often is wall said in our former president? How often is very or really or bigly said? He doesn't actually say bigly. It's funny, but it's not true. But the idea, how many times does he say huge? You know, that's our joke with Donald Trump, right? How often does he actually say it? How often does Joe Biden say malarkey, if ever? That's data. And it's got nothing, I mean, it will have to do with numbers eventually, but this is not statistics. This is you getting into data and telling us something that we couldn't have found on our own. And we haven't made any charts yet because you have to have the data before you make the chart. If I go back to our let me name this up here. So I'll just put this up here. I'll clean that up later if you want it. If we go back to our survey here, what I like about Google Forms is I can go up to here, and I can have it pop out a new spreadsheet, which I'll make available to y'all. It'll be in the folder if you're so inclined. It's anonymized. I mean, in case anybody was embarrassed about their guacamole preferences. That's why I didn't ask you for your names, because it doesn't matter for this. But look at the data we've got here. And look at what's here and what's not here. So we've got our different West Virginia entries. Now, what I would do with this, because I can't change anything here. Oh, I can't. Never mind. I can't. Oh, great. I just deleted data. There we go. Here's our data. So what I could do is I could go in and I could update these. And I could change all the WVAs to West Virginia. There's easier ways to do this. But I'd clean this up. I'm not going to do it all now. But I can clean this. These are comparable to each other. And I can look through and see, oh, this one says School of Medicine, and maybe somebody else says WVU School of Medicine. That's clearly the same entry. So I'd clean that up, and I'd work with that. But this data that I've got here is I've got something I can work with now. So what I'd like you to do as a quick brainstorming activity, using the chat, you can say it out loud too if you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a document. I'm going to resize my screen again here, because planning matters. So let's create over here, share. Brainstorm 1. Oh, help if I can spell right. 1. Data ideas for our group. So if you would, please, jump in. I'm going to change this document so that it is publicly accessible. Where to go? Where are you at? Come on, come up here. Oh, because I haven't given a name yet. That would help. Brainstorm 1. Great. Come on, get over here. Okay, I'm going to share this and make this publicly accessible. If you would, jump into that document and just add some possible story ideas. What I don't want to hear, though, is charts. Nothing about a bar chart about this. Things that you could ask about the data that's available, that's in this sheet. And I'll flesh this document out a little bit in just a second. Let me change this so anybody can access it and anybody can edit it. Okay, it's available to you all. If you're not able to access it right now, that's okay. But ideally, I'd like to get everybody, just try to get some ideas in there from our group data. And I will link that here just so, again, I tend to be redundant. I like to have lots of ways to get at the same question. That's me. So let me grab that, get link, copy link. I know some of you are already in there. Our group data. And I'll apply this. So if you want to click over to it, there we go. I'm going to call this data-driven questions. That's actually a more appropriate way of referring to this. So questions are based on the data that you see. So not stuff that we'd have to go beyond our data set for. So it could be as simple as like, what's the average age of our class? That's a question. I know I just blew one of your questions probably. Oh, we got comparisons? God bless you. Do short people eat Chipotle guacamole? Fine question. We'll pick that one apart in just a second. I'm constantly changing. This is why I love Google. It's dangerous for me because I'm constantly updating these things like mid-class. Because as my thoughts change, it's an offshoot of the ADHD. And as I always say, this is not me being glib about it. I literally have ADHD, which you've probably guessed at this point. But and so I work in a way that is functional for me, which tends to involve quick adaptations and doing lots of stuff last minute. But when it works, it's great, as Gonzo says. And as we start adding these in, let's try to get everybody who's able to, try to get at least one question in there. Try to phrase these as, it looks like everybody's phrasing these as questions, which is great. Questions are how we start a story. And it's okay if they're broad. If your question is overly broad, still ask it. And we'll try to crack into how we could break that into useful proxies. If you've got a really concrete one, like, what's the average age of our class? Write that too. That's the point. I want to get a picture of just the range of questions that are possible in asking, in building data-driven stories. Because you have to start with a question. We don't start with a chart. Never, ever, ever. We've got some filling in. What do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, coming up on 10. That's pretty good. Feel free to keep adding in. That's useful to see, but this will give us a start. So let's take a look. How many of us were born in West Virginia? and still live in West Virginia. Interesting. So take a look at this. So we've got clearly, how do we answer that first one? Well, we do a quick count. Count WV born, and you'll need to make the consistently listed, and then count the residents. And then how do we present that data? We could say raw numbers. This many were born here. This many are still here. We could also show, you could calculate percent remaining. So percent of those who are born here that live here now, for example. That's a chart to show. And we could compare that, next steps. Compare to other states. We just had a census, I'm sure you saw, in which we're going to lose a seat in Congress next year because our population is declining. And if you're in West Virginia, you know our population is declining. So if we look at this, our question would be not just to compare to other states, but to compare to those census results. Is our number remaining lower, a lower percent? We would expect it to be the case, but we don't know until we test it, than other states. That's a question we can ask with data and answer. Now, again, we'd see, and again, another comparison. Our class percent to state as a whole. We could say, okay, well, X% of us that live here were born. X% of us that were born here still live here. How does that compare to overall births in the state and people that still live in the state right now? Are we higher or lower? I don't know. That would be a comparison we would need to make for that, depending on how we'd follow through on that. Let's see. Do short people eat Chipotle guacamole? Okay, I talked about proxies earlier, right? What needs a proxy in this question? You can tell me in chat. You can belt it out. Do whatever you want to do. What in this question? It's a great question. What needs a proxy? In here. Here, I'm going to add another bullet here.
Answers from the chat include define short.
Absolutely. Short equals what? What would we call short? Again, your mileage may vary. It's different for men than for women. A short man is, might be an average height woman. Let's ask Dr. Google. Again, I Google a lot because why not? We're trying to get some quick answers here. What height, let's see what the internet says, is considered, oh, there it is right there. God bless you, autocomplete. 5'4". I don't know, psychology says we're going to use psychology today's standard. To that end, we'd want to make sure we're going to say 5'4" according to per psych today. So we can say this is where our standard comes from, not just because I said so. What else needs a proxy? Anything? Eat Chipotle guacamole. Think about our data. Was the question, do you eat guacamole? There's a couple possibilities. You might always get it. You might rarely get it. Now, we could show, do we include any? Yes, or differentiate between always, sometimes. Each one of those is a different chart. If we include all yes, if we only use always, if we do like that stack bar thing where like the dark color is the always and the light color is the sometimes, all kinds of things. And so we can look at that comparison between, we'd compare, because here's our compared to what? If we just show the percentage of short people that eat guacamole, we don't have a graphic because there's no context. We don't know compared to what. We don't know what that means. We need to compare that to, well, what? Would we compare to the class as a whole? Would we compare to the people who don't get it? Would we put both of those in? Oh, hang on the wrong screen. Non-walkers. What's like walkers? Walkers? I don't know. Making up words here today. Each one of those is a different story. The American public as a whole. I don't think we have guacamole numbers for the entire population, but you get the idea that each one of those is a different comparison. How many people were born in the U.S. versus weren't born in the U.S. versus were born in the U.S.? Yes, definitely. And right there's the problem in my data, because I said, what state were you born in? We probably have international faculty and staff and students in here that weren't. So you can't answer that question because I said, what state? You can say wherever you're from, but I didn't ask you a fair question, which again, worded intentionally. I always have international students in my classes, and I like to see whether they point out that I wrote a bad survey or whether I have to bring it up. Usually they don't, because we tend to defer to authority, which is unfortunate because I messed up intentionally, but it's still an error. That's not a useful survey if you're not from the United States. I have erred, not you, by being born not in the United States. Let's see. Correlation between age. Oh, correlation. Look at you. Between age and how West Virginia is represented in writing. Okay, what proxies do we need? Again, chat's fine, out loud's fine. Age brackets, okay. Could do individual ages or use age brackets, so we could have young, old, that kind of thing. What does it mean to be represented? Yeah, what's that about? How could we? Let's see. Abbreviations versus complete spelling. How could we? Oh, I see. Wait, I see what we're talking about. So we're talking about represented right. We're talking about literally whether we went WV, WVA, or West Virginia. Yeah. For a minute, I thought we were talking about like, wow, we're getting deep in the sense of like how we're represented in narrative fiction or that kind of thing. Represented. I'm curious about that. WV, WV, WVA, West Virginia, other. Definitely. I'd love to see that. You could also correlation with origin, non-WV, with education. I will tend to write education, not just are you smart, but I'm a journalist by trade. And so a lot of time I will write West Virginia as WVA because that's the AP style rule for how to write West Virginia. So I'm trained to write it that way. Just like you might be trained to use two spaces after a period. You're not writing on a typewriter anymore, but you might still do it because maybe you've never used a typewriter, but your teacher was trained to do it, so they made you do it, even though there's no reason to not use to use two spaces. There's no reason not to split an infinitive, et cetera, et cetera. But we keep those habits going. Wonderful question. I'm going to move on from this. Not to do pet owners have money for guac? I love that. I would love to see that. Is the number of pets you own related to your tendency to buy guac? Now, this is what we might call, again, thank you so much. This is what we might call, though, a spurious correlation, which is, here's in just a second. He has been doing this for years, and it's one of my favorites. And let me put in here, let me add the link in for this. What Tyler does, talking about him like I know him, is takes data that correlates, that has nothing to do with each other. So, for example, there's a grim one to start our class with. Let me scroll through. Number of people who drowned by falling into a pool correlates with the films Nicolas Cage has appeared in. That is true. Those numbers correlate. Do they have anything to do with each other? No, they do not. But the curve tracks. This is statistically a 66.6% correlation of these two lines. They're not related. And to take it out of the silly, number of per capita cheese consumption versus number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bed sheets. It's another one. The example I always like to give is every summer, the rate of ice cream consumption goes up. And also every summer, the murder rate goes up. So clearly we can conclude that eating ice cream leads to murder. No! There's an additional variable there, of course. We eat more ice cream because it's hot outside. We murder more, not you, you're wonderful people, but because it's hot outside and crimes of passion tend to get committed more frequently in hot weather. This is true. Maybe just because we're seeing people rather than being locked indoors. That's what the correlation's with. But because those two things go up, you could have somebody say, well, this went up and that went up, so there you go. We'll see it in our vaccine stories. Say it in a more sobering note. People say, well, I got sick, so the vaccine causes sickness. Well, no, it's a spurious correlation. But That chart sure is persuasive, which is why we're teaching this, because hey, these things go together, right? Margarine consumption and divorce rate in Maine. If you care about your relatives in Maine, please stop eating margarine. And again and again. Again, I show you this stuff not to waste time, because graphics are fun. I love graphics. If I can leave you the idea that maybe graphics are actually kind of fun, if I can bring you down even one tick on the anxiety scale I asked you about, then I have succeeded here. I will also have succeeded if I show you how to make some damn graphics. So let's do that. I didn't forget. Let's go back over to working in it. So we've got spreadsheets. Give me a quick show of hands, thumbs, whatever. Who has used a spreadsheet? I know some of you, you use too many spreadsheets. Most of us, maybe not all of us, a lot of us, though, most of us have used spreadsheet. That's good. We're pretty comfortable with that. So we're going to have some spreadsheets. And again, you've worked in what spreadsheet today? Here we are. We are going to tinker a little bit with spreadsheets. Well, we're going to go with this. If you are lost on anything, please do let me know. I've got to make sure we get to the actual charts. I want to show you two things in this: sorting and filtering. Again, some of you know this, but it's important that we go into it. So if you go in to the data, now I'm going to be working on our responses here. If you'd like to use this, make a copy of this file and put it, because I'm going to be working in this file. So don't work in the file that I'm working in. That would be bad. But if you would like to use this, make a copy of this file and follow along with me. But I'm going to show you two things that I use. This is a data set of 20 entries. You don't need to sort and filter it, probably. But if you're working with 100 entries, 1,000, 10,000 entries, yeah, you want to sort and filter that. If you can do this, you are ahead of most people on spreadsheets. But let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, I'm using Drive, not Excel. It's very similar in Excel, though, too. And the guide I give you, I think, talks about Excel as well. So I would select all this, and I go up to Data. Let's say I want to sort by entries, by title, staff, student, faculty, all that kind of thing. So I'll select all this. I'll go up to Data. Now, there's quickie ones up here. I go down to Sort Range because I like to do things the long way. I'll say my data has a header row. That's where it says timestamp, title, that kind of thing. I don't want to sort that. Make sure you've clicked that. So I want to sort by the title. And I want to sort it alphabetically from A to Z. I'll click Sort. And now I've got A up here for all the above, F for faculty, S for staff, ST for student down here. They're in order so I can see where my faculty, staff, students, and all the above are located at. It's the quickest way to make data meaningful. Now you'll see over here, by the way, that if I'd sorted by state, we'd have all the West Virginias spelled out, then all the WVs, and so it'd be sorted a little bit differently, which is why those data need to be consistent. So it would be able to identify that I need to clean these up as well. Now let's try another thing. Let's filter. So select all your data. And I know some of you probably don't know how to filter. If you can sort and filter, you're coming out of this stuff with skills that most people do not have about spreadsheets. Believe it or not. I know for those of us that know them, it's like, how could you not know how to do this? But it's true. It's true. Let me show you. So select all. Go to Data. Create a filter. And nothing happens, right? Now, look at these little filters, little triangles that show up here on each column. Each one of these lets you filter out certain things. Let's click on the what state you were born in. Click on the arrow next to that. And it gives you this option. And down here, it gives me all my possibilities down here. And see, we've got several non-US states here, which is because I designed my survey wrong. Intentionally, but still wrong. Everything's got a check mark next to it. Let's uncheck. You see there's a WV at the top of this? Let's uncheck West Virginia. Watch what happens. Well, nothing, because I have to click OK. If I click OK, West Virginia is now hidden. It's still there. The data's still there, but I filtered it out. Let's click on this again. Oh, sorry. Click on, cancel that. Click on, and you see how the filter here is now full because it filtered out some data. I'm going to click on this again. I'm going to bring West Virginia. I'm going to click Select All. Do you see this on my screen? Click this. That brings everything back. It's not there yet. It won't be until I click OK. Let's say I want to see just the people who were born internationally. So I'm going to click Clear. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to click every non-US state that I see. I believe it's just these two. Again, you'll see this is row 4 and row 19. All the other data is still there. It's just filtered out so I can focus on our two people who are not born in the United States. And I can look at this and I can go through and say, I want to know about how tall are people not from the United States. I don't know why I'd want to know that, but I do. How interested you are. Hey, they're both interested. Great. One's very anxious. One's not anxious at all. One has lots of pets. One has none. One likes green. One likes orange. Does that tell me anything about, one's the 42 person. Oh, I love you so much. Does that tell me anything about people who are not from the United States? No. But it gives me a perspective. For this class, certainly, Yes, I will show that again right now, Jenna. Thank you. How to show the filter next to the title again. So I'm going to clear these. I go right back to the beginning. Clear filters. Click OK. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Select all. Did the wrong thing. OK. So let me undo my filters first of all. Turn off filter. OK. So there's all my data again. I'm going to select all. I'm going to go up to data. Create a filter. I'm going to see the little green empty triangles here. I'm going to create a filter for, let's try state where we live in. Click on that little arrow fella here, and everything that's checked is shown. If I don't want to show all the Pennsylvania ones, I can uncheck those individually and click OK, and that'll just show me all my West Virginia possibilities. Or I can go back in, click select all, and then clear and only show people that said WV, and it does. You can actually get more specific. If they're numbers, you can filter by, numbers greater than 2 or less than 7 or whatever. Lots of ways to filter. But I'm going to shut off my filter right now. If you can do this, you can get a better sense for what data you have, what data you don't have, and how to go about changing that data. Let's make real quickly a quick pivot table. So what I want you to do, don't worry, pivot table is really useful for making charts. What we're going to do today, you won't have to worry too much about it, but I want to show you how to do this. This is a key part of making a good graphic. Because, again, we only have 20 entries here. Imagine you had 100. Imagine you had 500. You don't want to go through and eyeball that. You're a human. You'll get it wrong. Let's make the computer do it for us. Select all. Go up to Data. Down where it says Pivot Table. I'll leave that up for just a second. I've got a handout in there, by the way, that shows you how to make a pivot table. It talks about data sheets that you don't have, unfortunately, but the process is what matters. So we're going to make a simple pivot table. A pivot table is something that's going to take this complex data and simplify it for us. Click on Pivot Table, and it's going to say, do you want a new sheet or existing sheet? I'm going to say a new sheet, because I don't want it to show up in this window. So make sure it says New Sheet. Click Create. And down at the bottom, it created a new tab that says Pivot Table 1, and there's nothing in it. Why? Because we haven't told it what to put in it yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in two things. Down where it says rows. And if you're using Excel, it's slightly different than this, which I won't have time to get into today, but this is how I'm using Drive for this. They're not that different, but there's little changes, unfortunately. Next to rows, click Add. Rows are going to be each row of this table you're creating. We want to see rows for title, because we know there's only 4 categories for that. Click on that. And look what happens. It shows me all the above except faculty, staff, student. Those are all the possible categories of title that we have in this group. But it doesn't tell us anything other than what they are. We know there's 4 categories. We don't know how many are in each. For that, we need to add values. So down where it says values, click Add, and add title. Well, that we have 13 staff members, 3 students, 2 faculty, and 1 all the above except faculty in here. Everybody able to see that? Pivot tables are weird. Now these get really complex, and that's beyond what we're going to be working with. But if you can do this, now imagine that you had 100. We had 100 people in here, and we wanted to make a bar chart breaking down how many, or a pie chart breaking down what the title was of all those people. We're not going to count them in that table. There's formulas we could use to do that. That's going to take a long time. This pivot table gives us the 4 numbers that would actually be the slices of our pie chart. And this is what we're going to do. So if you have this created, we're going to make a pie chart. I know I just said pie charts are terrible. What am I doing? We're going to make it real simple here. So for right now, I'm going to make one in here. Then I'm going to show you how to use something called an app called Infogram to do it. But we're going to show you how to make one right here. So if you have this window pulled up, and if you want me to go back on anything, please do let me know. We're keeping this small, but you should have these 4 categories. I'm going to select these 4. If I click here and hold down Shift and click down here, it will select all the names and all the counts, just like this. What I'm actually going to do first is I'm going to sort this because I'm like that. I want to sort this by, hang on, data, sort sheet by column B. Oh, what are you doing? Hang on. Range, data's header row. Oh, I see. Wait, I left out the header row. Sorry. Clicked the wrong thing. Data, Sort range. Again, I said a row. Sort the count, from high to low. Oh, that's right. Sorry, I'm trying to work like I'm in Excel. I apologize. Over here where it says title, I should be sorting in descending order by the count. If you don't have that, it's not a big deal. But like I said, high to low is generally the best way to. I'm sorry, I was trying to work like I was in Excel. This is where they get weird between each other. So again, over here where it says title, this is where I sorted. I want the order to be in descending, high to low, and the sort to be by the count, 13 down to 1. So I've got that data. With that, I'm going to select this data. I just clicked and dragged. And I'm going to go to Insert, Chart. It gives me a pie chart. It guessed what kind of chart I needed. It was right this time. It won't always be right. And so we've got that big old staff slice, then students, then faculty, then this. And I can go in and I can change these things. And I say, wait a minute, I didn't want that. I actually wanted a bar chart. I'd go over to chart type. Over in the sidebar here, you can see. Click on this, and I'd go down to find, there is bar chart. And that breaks that down in a form that's what I actually wanted here. Or however. Now, I just showed you how to make an Excel chart. Nobody uses Excel charts. They're terrible. They're fine to put in a Word document or a research paper. I shouldn't say it like that. But let's make something kind of cool now. The point is I want us to be able to make, I want you to come out of here having made a chart, knowing what chart to make, what kind to make. A pie chart or bars will be appropriate here because we're showing parts of a whole. Pie is good for showing parts of a whole, and there's only 4 slices, so that's an acceptable number. Bars are good because they let us compare these end lines a little bit better. Either one of those would be an acceptable solution. A line chart would not be good. A scatter plot would not be good because we don't have 2 variables. These are good choices for this. Let's do a little bit more with this, though. I said at the beginning, if you haven't already, that's okay. Go create it now. But I'd like you to create an account with Infogram. Again, I don't work for Infogram. It's just a good resource. There's lots of free data visualization tools out there. This is the one we are using. So go into Infogram. You'll need an account for that. And I'll pull it up here so you can see what I'm talking about. I'll close that at BTS. I'm already logged in, but we'll walk you through this. And I've got, as always, I've got a handout in there for you on how to work through Infogram if you're so inclined to follow that, or you just want to watch me chatter today and work through it on your own. All these resources, once again, they are all in the Data Viz Workshop folder, and they are all free for you to take and use and do what you will with. And you are also free to ask me questions. Say, what the hell do you mean by that, Bob? And I will tell you, even if class is over. So don't worry. If you're the kind of person that would rather just soak it in right now and tinker with it on your own, you do you. In Infogram, have that account created. If you don't already, just let me know. I can double back on stuff. And you come to this screen here. Now I need to delete some stuff because I'm on the free account, but I need to, I am getting kind of big for some of these, so I'm going to need to delete some of these soon. I think you can create 10 on the free account. Most of them I delete after class. I've just been busy this semester. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new chart that shows some of the stuff that we've got here. So for infographics, for up at the top, you should be able to create a new project. You should have this screen. You won't have this here because you haven't created any projects. We want to create a new infographic, which is up here. So click on that. Now they give you all these templates to use. Don't mess with the templates today. If you want to on your own, go ahead. Let's keep things simple, though. We want the good old blank template. Click on that blank one right there. And it'll say, what are you doing? I'm going to call this workshop graphic example. You can call it Dave if you want. I'm giving you an example that we can work with. So I'm going to create here, make it public on the web. And here's a big old blank document. How intimidating is that? We're going to make some things in Infogram. Now, look over here on this side. Every one of the, on this left bar, these are the things you can add to your document. So if I click on A for text here, I can add in a title and call this, okay, thank you. I can call this example, or I'll call this data workshop example. Right there. And let's say I want to put some text below that. I can do that. I'll click body text. Did I insert it? Did I? No, I didn't. Oh, I did. I did it twice. I'll type, here's where my charts are. Again, you'd obviously want something more meaningful. By the way, you can click these and drag them around and put them where they need to go. This reminds me of BioRender. I have not seen BioRender, Melissa. I'll have to take a look at that. I'm going to pull that tab up now while I'm thinking of it. But otherwise, I will forget. I'll be back to you, BioRender. And let's actually get some charts in here. So click on Add Chart, the second button down here. Let's add a chart. You get all these options. Now we already know we've got data that can be used in a pie chart. So let's do a pie chart. Let's show the pie chart some love. If you scroll down here, you get all these different types. Under pies, you've got all these. Don't be too wowed by these. A donut chart's just a pie chart with a white circle in the middle of it. It's the exact same thing. Look at them. See? Same thing, white circle. It always blows students' minds when I show them how to make a donut chart just by putting a white circle on top of a pie chart. That's all it is. Exact same thing, though. We're going to make a pie chart because we're not fancy. There you go. An infogram gives you default data. Take a look. If we come over here, let me resize a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. So you should have a pie chart on your tab. And if anybody's stuck, by the way, please do let me know. I'm happy to backtrack on things, get people where we need to go. If I happen to miss your chat, Jesse will inform me, but usually I get a notification. So you should be all right. Let me resize my window here. I really need a bigger screen. I'm working from the home office, by the way, if you're wondering about the plethora of pumpkins and transformers behind me. So it goes in the pandemic year. But here we've got our pie chart. The default one they give us has these slices for different media genres. We want to change that data. So over here, look over on the right side. We've got settings and we've got edit data. We want to edit that data. Click on edit data and you get a little mini spreadsheet. Again, this is the default data they provided to us. If you want to see how that works before we add anything else in, let's change. There's a column for books and a column for movies. We'll worry about books right now. Let's change. Right now, drama is the smallest slice. And so let me click back just to show you. Again, drama is this yellow slice up here. Let's make drama big. In the real world, please do not make up data. But for where we're at right now, let's change that 10,967 to a 4967. And the drama slice expands, it embiggens itself. And we've got this. If you click on the tab up top here for movies, this is how Infogram works. You can see a different pie chart that shows the breakdown for movies. This is the default data they give. It's made up, it means nothing. Let's grab our data from our data visuals. So we're going to go in. I'm going to delete the movies column entirely. We don't need that. And we are actually going to delete all this data. We don't need any of it right now. And we're going to go back in our data visuals over here. And we are going to copy these. I'm going to copy the head. Don't forget to copy the headers as well. So these 5 rows and 2 columns. So yours should look like mine. Copy this. And then go back into Infogram and paste it. I'm going to change these names up a little bit. So I'm going to call this title still. Well, that stays there, I guess. I'm going to call this just count how many frequency. I'm going to call it participants. Participants. There we go. That sounds good. I'm going to change all the above, much as I enjoy it, to other. You get to be other today. Congratulations. Because it's short, and I'm like that. So you should have something that looks like this. You notice it's already updated over here to show us what that looks like. If I, well, let me resize. No, that's as small as it gets. We click over. We've now got 4 slices of data. They are sorted high to low. And we can see when I mouse over it, how many staff. I see the actual numbers, not just the percents. How many students, how many faculty, how many other are in our class. Any issues with this? Now then you realize, wait, I didn't want a pie chart. Nobody likes pie charts. Well, you can change that. I will please repeat, Shelley. In fact, I will do that by making a bar chart below it. So what I'm going to do is down here, I am going to place this. Can I change the percentages to count? For Infogram, the default, let's scroll through this. Actually, wait, let me paste it again, and I'll come back to that question, Jenna. So make sure I've got, make sure I don't skip that. I want to make sure that everybody's on this page first. So I'm going to place a new chart down here. And you can place, real quick, you can place as many charts as you want. And the default size, by the way, if this is too wide, look what happens when I mouse over the edge. I can make this more, I can make this more narrow. I can resize my chart. Because that's a huge, nobody needs a pie chart that big. This is fine. I can make this more narrow. So I've got a nice little scroller graphic that I can put somewhere that actually might get read. And I'll tinker around with this. And you can do from the bottom too. So you can make your chart smaller, taller. There's that. I'll scroll all the way down here and say, that's way too small. Let's make this chart, or that's way too tall. Let's make this chart shorter and bring it up and up and up and up and up and up and make something that actually fits stuff that I want to show. Man, that is tall. Holy cow. There we go. That's about as tall as it makes. I'll put some stuff below it. So now I'm going to place a chart below it. I want a bar chart. It's going to be the exact same data. I'll click on Insert. There she is. Here's that. I should give it another header down here. I'm not going to right now. Notice, by the way, my chart information went away. That's because I haven't clicked on one. If you're panicking because you can't find this bar, it's because you haven't clicked on a chart. If I click on my chart, there it is. Edit data and settings. If I click on this chart, there it is. You're all good. No worries. So let's change the data. Edit data. Here's the default data. I'm going to delete it. I don't want it. And I'm going to get that data from the, oh, so many screens to move. Hang on. Get that data from our visualization sheet. I will copy that little pivot table we made over here. Copy this. If you weren't able to make a pivot table, write these numbers down. 13 staff, 3 students, 2 faculty, all the 1 other. Copy that. Or you can just make up numbers too. I'm not going to know. But ideally, I'm trying to show you how to get from spreadsheet, big old spreadsheet data, to meaningful pivot table, to useful visualization. That's our process. We look at the data we've got, we come up with possible stories, we summarize it based on those questions, and then we take that summary and we make it into a chart. That's the process. You'll notice the chart is one part of that. It's the last part, and while not the least important part, it can't happen until you've gone through all the other parts of this. That's why I spent so much time talking about other stuff. You can't make good charts if you don't think about what you want to say with that chart. This is crucial. You are communicating. Don't communicate with just anything. A pie chart does not do everything. A line chart does not do anything. So anyways, I've grabbed this chart over here. It's got to be the right chart for the choice that you're making. So back to Infogram. Click right here. Paste it right there. I'm going to change, once again, I'll change all the above to other. I'm going to change count to participants. I think that's what I called it before. And my chart. Shelly, did that work out for you? Fantastic. And I'll go back to settings. And here is my bar chart. Now, this is the same data. You would not do 2 charts with the same data. I'm showing you that. Let's say I wanted to make that pie chart into a bar chart. If I go over here, I'd click on my pie chart, and right in the middle of pie, it says change. If I click that, I can then change it to a bar chart or a line chart, which it shouldn't be, but you know. A line chart, by the way, this is why a line chart's not appropriate for this. This line chart suggests that we saw a change between staff to students, between students to faculty, between faculty to other. That's not true. There's no relationship between these numbers. So it should not be a line chart. It should not be one line that changes over time. It should be a pie or a bar, which it is. I'll make it a donut. Why not? People like these. You can put the label in the middle of them, but it's just a pie chart with less ink. It's the same thing. How did you get that changed chart? Click on the chart so that your menu comes up here that says Edit Data and Settings. If you've got the chart you want to change, make sure you select it. If you don't see it, you haven't selected a chart. So click on the chart. Go over to it. When you mouse over it, it says Change right in the middle, and you'll be able to change that. Did that work for you, Melina? Now I have questions from, while I double back, I have questions from, let's see. Jenna, yes. Jenna asks, can you change the percentages to count? That is a good question. Let me see if that's the case. I don't believe you can. So some of these default, this, and what we're bumping up against is the limitations of Infogram, especially the free version. There's less you can do, but most of what you can do is most of what you're going to need. If I go down to chart properties, let's see, I'm trying to remember where this is at. To change percentages to count. It would be under data format, I think. Oh, I am blanking on that one. I apologize. Let me just remind myself. Color, fonts, legend, tooltips, data format. You know, actually, I don't know if you can for a pie chart. Can a label be added to the axes, though? Yes, that one you definitely can do, Melissa. Let me go down, and Jen, I'll double back to that to make sure. Let's see, Paige, I see your question. Let me ask you, can you provide me some clarification on what you mean by that while I proceed with Melissa's question here? Can a label be added to the axis? Yes. So click on your chart and mouse down to, where is it at? It is under chart properties, I believe. No, it's not. Oh, I was blank on this. Legend. Oh, it's because I can't see the full window in my screen. Sorry, it was there. I was in the wrong screen. I'll talk about accessibility in just a second here. But yes, you can change that. We've got the chart type here. We've got it selected. We'll go down to labeling the axes. There is no axis on the pie chart. That's why I couldn't it. Go into axis and grid, the bar charts here, and if you scroll down, you can change the x-axis title to be number of participants and title for the y-axis. And it updates those accordingly. So again, that is under axis and grid for the bar chart. That's not there for the pie chart because there is no axis and grid for the pie chart. Paige is asking, when you get a chance, can you show us the accessibility function? Yes, indeed. Come down here to accessibility. And this allows you, the default is to make this visible to screen readers. And you can label this as what it is, and you can change that description. So I can say a horizontal bar chart, and you can describe this as a chart breaking down the number of participants from faculty, staff, students. And this is what somebody using a screen reader, that's the information they would get to see what this chart is. We do want to make these as accessible as possible whenever possible, which is why the default is to be visible to screen readers. Let's see, if we use a chart for a web page, does this program generate alt tags? I believe that is what you would get from this, but I don't know about an alt tag specifically. When we get into share page, we will see that. And Jen is asking, can you export just the chart to include the presentation slide? This is where we do a little bit of gymnastics with the free version, because you want to be able to share and embed it in a WordPress document. Sadly, you'll need the pay version of it. But you can export it to use in places, and this is what I have my students do every semester the following way. If we go up here where it says share, now there's download here. If you click this, watch what happens. To download high quality, you got to pay. To get this version of it here, hang on, working, there we go. Yeah, you got to upgrade for the downloadable version of it, unfortunately. What I tend to do, if I want a static version, and why I like Infograms, I can make quickly, is do a screen grab, or if you're on a Mac, there's actually an application called Grab that's in your applications. And I will, let me share in a second, hang on. I'm telling you how to subvert the law, so bear with me. Because, you know, this is part of, we want to be able to communicate effectively. Let me stop the share on this. I'm going to share my desktop, filthy though it is. I have an app called Grab down here. And what I will often do and have students do if they want to just embed this in a document and don't have the pay version because, you know, if they're students, I'll open up Grab, which allows me to capture a selection, and I'll draw the box around this, which will give me a static version of that graphic that I can use. You'll notice that I can't mouse over this and the stuff doesn't come up, so I want to make sure the labels are as clear as possible, but that's often what I'll do. Now, that's not saying that's the only option you have, but if you want a static version you can run on something like that, that's where you'd want it to be. You'll still need to give credit and that kind of thing. So I use this for student work, for things that are not going out for commercial publication. If it's commercial publication, don't use something like that because you are using their, you know, proprietary software here for something that you'd be making money off of. Don't use it for that. Don't follow that advice. But if you're using it for something, yeah, snip tool, there's lots of screen grab tools for that. But for a presentation slide, yeah, use snip, use grab, use that kind of thing, use a screenshot, crop it down, and you got what you need. And that's fine, because you're not, this is academic purposes here. Does grab provide a better quality image than using a screenshot command? It's gonna be the same quality of image. Why I like grab is because it lets me go in and just select the part that I want, instead of taking the screenshot and then having to crop down on it, because I'm lazy. So if I can do it with one app, I'm gonna do it with one app. You can crop down in preview. So if you get the whole screenshot and then you open it in preview, you can crop it there. But I mean, again, why? That's my take on it. Let's see. Make sure.
Just a note on that though.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Command Shift 4 will give you a cursor that you can draw with as well. So it's sort of a shortcut to grab.
Oh.
Yep. On a Mac. Works differently on a PC, but on a Mac, that gives you a tool that becomes a cursor that you can very precisely draw the box that you want. But
there you go.
Same thing.
None of us is as smart as all of us. We get everybody together, we come up with more ideas than just one person's going to have. Let's go back a bit. Jenna asked, can you export the chart just to, wait, what I missed? On a web page? Well, I guess there's another question that I'm addressing there. So let me talk about what else we can do with share. Now, if you are sharing, you can create this to share. This is what I have my students do, in fact. You can share this and have it be public on the web. To be embeddable in a WordPress document, I believe you need to have the pay version for it, but you can get a working link that somebody can open up and pull up and share like this, and they can see the chart that you have made. And so if you just want to have a chart that you're sharing with someone, there you go. And you can do that. Now, again, for it to be embeddable in a WordPress document, you will need to have the publicly available, the paid version of it. One other thing, and again, just like I don't work for Google, I don't work for Infogram, but I want to touch on something about charts we have not talked about, which is, scroll down, create some more space if you need to, maps. Maps are data visualizations too. We can only show you so much in one day, but Infogram lets you do this. So if you click the third button down here that says Add Map, check out what happens. It gives you a bunch of choices, and you're going to learn to hate that green upgrade button, by the way, because these are all paid maps. So if you want to make an Africa map, you can. If you want to make a Nairobi map, you can't. You got continents are free, but if you want a West Virginia map, you're SOL. That's a technical term. If you want to show the entire continent of Africa, go ahead. But you're out of luck for individual countries, individual states, things like that. Just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But if we scroll back up here, we can get a world map, we can get a US map. So I'll click on Insert, and here's a US map with some default data, which I can click on and go in and mess around with. And I can show this data that shows all these states by how much of something they have, from 1 to either 9 or 10, I think. California, Nebraska have the least of it, whatever it is. Oregon, Washington, Texas are the darkest, so they have the most of it. If I decide that I want Texas to have the least of it, then I would open this up, I'd scroll down to Texas, and I'd change Texas from 9 to 1. And Texas goes white on me. If I don't like green, I'll show you how to change that color in just a second. But with all this data here, now let's say I went and found the percentage of people that voted for Joe Biden, and I'd calculated that in a spreadsheet. I would paste that. I'd make sure this is sorted in the right order, Alabama through Wyoming, making sure that I've got District of Columbia, if that's on it, because that's not a state yet. And then I'd paste it right in here. And my map would update to show me that breakdown. I could then go in, and as I scroll down here, I can change the color. Let's say green's a terrible choice. Let's say my cold color is pretty light. It's too light for what I want. I want to make that darker. I could go in and I could goose that up a little bit. Let's go into our greens. Let's make it something like that. And let's say I want my hot color to be a darker green. So I'd find something like, ooh, that's terrible, don't do that. There, and now I've got a better range of colors where I can see that distinction a little bit better. Or if I don't like green at all, I can change that. There's lots of stuff I can do. I can move the legend, that's this toolbar. It defaults to having it at the bottom. I don't know why. I like to have my legends at the top, so that's where I put mine. I can explain how it's broken down. I can add a title. I can do all kinds of stuff that shows for this map about what I want to show about the United States. Questions on any of what we've seen so far? So far today, we've collected data. We've come up with data-driven questions. We have sorted, filtered, and created a summarizing pivot table from that data. And we have put that data into some simple data visualizations. We've also talked about how to choose the right kind of chart. It's a lot, I know. That's why I put those handouts up there. Ain't nobody gonna remember all this. I'm not. That's why I put it in charts. I keep my brain in handouts. That way I can remember what I was talking about. Use what you like from that. The last stuff I want to show you are some next step type options. Infogram is pretty bare bones, especially the free version, but it'll get you what you need. If you can make charts in Excel and you can make charts in Infogram, you can visualize a whole world of things. And if you can choose those charts correctly based on useful data-driven questions, you can do even more. And that should give you at least a little bit more confidence of what we're talking about here. Let me show you, though, some other possibilities. In the document in the planning document that we've got, if we scroll down, because you surely got questions about what if I want to make more complex visualizations, or where do I get data from? I know those of you who are researchers, you've got too much data already, but if you're interested in identifying data tools, let me show you a couple resources here. So first of all, we talked about Infogram. Data Wrapper is a German site that frankly is I prefer it to Infogram, but it's a little bit more high-end. There's a pay version of this as well, too. The free version is a lot better. If you click on Start Create, well, here, I'll scroll down and just show you some of the things people can make. You can make maps, charts, tables, more complex visualizations. Let me pull up some of their charts and just show you some of the stuff you can make. my computer right now. You upload data, you can paste data, you can link data from what you've got. I can import a Google spreadsheet, so I can actually link to the data that we just put together today. Or I can go through the sample sheets they have, which is what I want to show you right now. They're trying to plug their own work, so they want to show you. So here's a scatter plot of income versus life expectancy. And it spits it in here in this seemingly impregnable wall here. That's okay. You don't need to worry about how it looks. You just need to know that it's there. But you can also upload an Excel sheet, import from Google, or link to a data set. When I've got what I want, I'll click proceed. I'll check through this. It's fine because it's their default. So I'll click proceed yet again. And it's going to ask me, how do I want to visualize this? I want to visualize this as a scatter plot, which is the default they gave me. So I can see that as GDP per capita and life expectancy in years change, generally, it's more of a curve than a diagonal line. We've got some weird outliers over here. Like Macau's GDP is the highest, and yet it's not, and China's too, and yet the life expectancy isn't that different than places that have relatively low GDP, like Nicaragua, Costa Rica, things like that. So there's other variables that are involved here. But it's an interesting picture. We've got this kind of weird archipelago over here of these spread out values. Now, if I wanted, it won't be appropriate here, but if I wanted, I can show this as, hang on, a bar chart. Not a very good bar chart. I'm showing you, you can see, not every chart serves every purpose. A stacked bar chart. Nothing to stack. Grouped bars. Not so much. Pie chart, what's that going to look like? I can only imagine. Other. Here's the 4 biggest GDP countries, and here's everybody else. Multiple pies. Yeah, not that useful. The data clearly is scatterplot data, because this is the meaningful visualization of this. You can do maps, you can make tables. It's a really powerful tool. And then you can go on to publish and embed these as well. And the free version is a lot more generous than Infograms, but it's more techy, which is why I start with Infogram for newcomers to this. But it's a great resource. One other tool that I put up is Raw Graphs. And you thought Data Wrapper was techy. Raw Graphs is even weirder, but man, is it cool. It's open source, which means it's completely free. And I'll look at one of their samples. So for example, we can go in and look at these names before I even get into it. Dendrograms, sunburst diagrams, hexagonal binning, bubble charts, radar charts, matrix plots. My God, don't worry. It's just to give you an idea of the potential it's in here. So Olympics medals. Let's look at a steam graph of Olympics medals. Here's their default data. Okay. They've chosen a chart for us. It's an alluvial diagram. Alluvial is a fancy way of saying based in river related. It's going to show us flows of things. And we'll map it. It's already laid out, I believe. Did they? No, I need to map steps. They're supposed to tell us what to put in those plagues. Alluvial diagram of, I think I want to put, what was I going to show? The steps are going to be by year. And the size is going to be by number of metals, if I'm getting this correctly. And I need the country as well. So steps per year. Let's see what we get. Yeah. That's a lot. But what this is trying to show us here, what happens if I take country out? I'm curious. Oh, I need at least 2 dimensions, so it would have to be like this. So what this is going to show us is the higher this is, the more metal that country has won over the years. And I think I need to swap these around. I think year needs to go over here. There you go. Let me go back and I'm going to show you another one. Actually, there's one I prefer to this one. Well, we're at 5 till. I don't want to go too far in time, so I want to show one more resource instead of this. Point is, raw graphs can get nuts. It's a lot more complex, but if you're curious and the basics don't do your job, you might look into Data Wrapper and raw graphs to see more. These are resources for where you go next. You'll be fine with Excel and Infogram to start off with. Other things I wanted to show you, one treasure trove that I really buried the lead here is the New York Times a couple years back made its entire data journalism training resources available to the public. They're all free and available to you. They're grouped fairly well. These are what New York Times uses to train its own non-data reporters to use data in their stories. There's cheat sheets, there's training information, there's data sets that you can use for training. They're not data sets you use for actual publication for a variety of reasons. All kinds of really powerful stuff. And it's insane. It's just the fire hose. This is where I got my 7 data stories from. All kinds of good stuff in here. But again, this is a resource for you. There's also the sense that I've got a bunch of other links for go-to data sites if you're looking for data, but one particularly good one is the Census's own Explore Census data site. If you are looking for, well, senior citizens, let's try that. Anything that's related to what I just searched for on the census comes up here, which I can identify what's available for this and what I can do with that data. I can find maps that fit that category, tables, different pages, things like that, voting age, population by poverty status, all kinds of stuff. Again, you're drinking from the fire hose right now. The point is, these are resources for you, for where you'd go next. Last thing, data visualization sites. The best way to get better with data visualization is to look at a lot of data visualization. I've showed you the pudding already. This is a visual communication thing. You can only see what you have seen. So if you haven't seen a lot of charts, you're going to feel really anxious about what kind of charts to make. If you've seen good and bad bar charts, you're going to know where they go and where they don't go. In addition to the pudding, Flowing Data is a fantastic one. They put up posts every day about the best data visualizations from around the world, as well as training tools. Some of them are really basic. Maps of land required to get to net zero emissions. This is how much land we need of wind farms to get to net zero. This is how many acres of solar farms we'd need. And on and on. This is from Princeton University's, so they link to where these come from. Flowing Data doesn't make these. A map of small multiples showing how the largest glaciers in the world and how they've melted. The light blue is where they used to be. The dark blue is where they are now. That's data too. Not something you'd be able to do today. Population growth and seats gained. That's census data. They've got lots of silly stuff too. There's one called data underload that they put in here, which is where they map, well, some not so silly. Happiness has decreased during the pandemic. Here's our overall people reporting themselves in the general social survey as very happy over the decades until 2020. Look at that drop. That's a compared to what question for you. Most still answered pretty happy though. As many, if not more, still saying they were pretty happy, but way fewer saying they were very happy. Not too happy, another big jump than ever before. Any question you have, there's probably a chart you can use to answer that. And again, I like data underload just because it tends to be silly. What to call your distant relative. If you've ever wondered, like I have, what a second cousin once removed is, here's the data for you. I am a child, and my relative is a grandchild. They're my nephew. I am a great-grandchild, and my relative is a great-great-grandchild. They're my second cousin once removed. And on and on. And it's interactive. So you can actually fill in what you are. I'm a great-great-great-grandchild. Sure, why not? And my relative is a child. They would be my great-great-granduncle or grand-aunt. There you go. All the problems of the world solved by data visualization. And again, lots of other resources on there. I'm showing what I can. I could talk about this all day. 538, I didn't get a chance to talk about. Wonderful data-driven site that really frames everything in form of a question, so you can identify what question leads to what answer through stats and through data visualization. But you've got some tools you can use. It's basic stuff, but it's a start, and it's a way you can go from question to data gathering, to data analysis, to summarization, to actually creating that tiny, insignificant bar chart that comes from all that front-end work that you did. Wondering why I talked a lot about not charts, because you can't make a good chart if you don't know what you're asking first. That's what I've got for you today.
Bob,
yes.
As a free resource, how do you feel about Google Data Studio?
It's okay. I mean, I'm generally indulgent of Google because they try. They try to make stuff, and it doesn't always. Like I've got Google Data Set Search linked down here. It's not great, but it's a resource. And there's also Google Public Data Explorer, which is not great, but it's a resource. Like it's and again, I'm already. Which one were you talking about, Jesse? Again?
Google Data Studio as a way to visualize data.
I've seen it, and I have not talking all Mr. Google today. But just you fall into your habits of doing things. I use Adobe Illustrator to make a lot of my charts too. I would like to play with it. Based on what they've made available in other areas, I suspect it's probably pretty user friendly because they're going to make it free and open source, so you don't use those other sources. And they can see what you're looking for.
And it plays nicely with Google Sheets, especially. The thing I like about it myself in terms of web analytics is that it will connect to an API, so you have a constant sort of source of data that is updated in the back end.
Ooh.
If you can connect to a source, then you can have constantly refreshed data, and you can control when that data is refreshed.
I need to
as
go
well,
play with
which
that then.
a lot of sites can't do that. Anyway, I didn't want to throw a wrench in the
No,
works.
not
I
at
just
all.
wondered if,
And that's the thing. I mean, because there's always more resources like Infograms. People that will never use Infogram in their life that make great charts. It's, you know, the more resources we have, the more we can find what works for us and what plays. I like that phrase used. What plays well with others is really what we're looking for here, because it's, you know, why I'm using these Google platform already is because we want things that you don't have to create multiple accounts and multiple things to join and multiple things that hopefully they all talk to each other to make it work. We're trying to streamline things as much as possible. Anything else I can address? That's all I came prepared with today, and we're at time anyway. I'll hang out as long as people are here, but I will say, you know, thanks for coming in. Thanks for your time. Hopefully that anxiety count went down at least a little bit for you. I am happy to address anything. I'll add my contact information up here. That's and email. I am leaving the spaces in here. Mail. Edu. I'm spacing it out. You'll have to do the extra work just so I don't get scraped. But feel free to call if you got questions. I love to weigh in on this kind of stuff. I have no trouble. I don't know what the official policy is on the recording. I have no trouble with that though. So that's a Jesse question, but I personally have no issue with this. There you go.
Yeah, to address that, I will trim this recording, pretty it up a little bit, and I'll put it online as a community resource for folks, and that'll be up for a little while. I'm going to say at least 6 months and possibly longer. Another quick plug is you know, this workshop's brought to you by the Andrew A. Mellon Foundation through a grant, and under which I'm working at the university. And so Shannon Cunningham and I will send out a very short exit survey. So if you could please take that at your leisure, and so look for that in your email connected to this workshop later on.
Okay, I'm just adding in here. Let me know if I can help. Happy to help. Love talking about this stuff, as hopefully you saw, and happy to provide feedback on anything you might be working on, or just help direct you for things you might be working with. This is what I do. Thanks for coming in.